The vast majority of the people of Limerick were Catholic. Now, something also unique. My mother's people were Protestant. Not my grandmother, my immediate grandmother, but all of her generation. They were a family who'd come probably from Scotland, were Presbyterian, I think, to the north of Ireland, and then ultimately with the garrison came down to Limerick City, to the Midlands, and eventually my grandfather was the first generation, I believe, of Catholics who converted over. So, my mother's only sister married Protestant, and used to, well, she went back to her roots, and she lived with her Protestant husband, who had two lovely girls, and they belonged to the Church of Ireland. So I grew up in an atmosphere of the Catholic Protestant milieu, knowing we always thought they were different, but that was only in our imagination. And one of my earliest recollections too would be, my mother would say on Saturday, we were all ushered, all Catholic kids, down to go to confession to the local priest. And usually on Saturday, our little Protestant cousins, who were our age, would come in. And my mother would say, now, take Margaret and Marion down, say a prayer to the Blessed Virgin. She'd give us money and put the pennies, light the candle. And of course, as you may know, and most people do, Protestants do not normally have statues. They don't usually put pennies and light candles to Madonna or anybody else. And I remember my older cousin saying, why are you giving the money to the statue? They can't use it. Why don't we buy something for us with that? Or let's give them half and we'll get the rest for ourselves. And we did a few times. But at one particular occasion we went down. We didn't like the priest listening to confessions. And my cousin said, let's go to our parish. So we walked away to the other end of the town to the Protestant church. My brother was my sister, myself. And we came back home and Mama said to us, how was confession? How was this? How was that? And Joe's big mouth, I kept my mouth shut, strange. I looked. I thought, oh, it was nice. And she said, oh yeah, and the priest gave us some, what we would call biscuits with cookies over here, and lemonade. And my mother said, what? I never knew that priest to give anything like that to the children. And then Joe said, and we sang hymns. You what? At that point, the cat was on the bench. She said, where did you go? I said, we went to Margaret's church. And my mother got very upset. You went to the Protestant church? So, that all blew over. But then, the next day or two, my mother was talking to us about chiding us a little bit for going. We were supposed to take them to the Protestant. Said, you know something, Mama? I'm going to tell my Aunt Benny, your sister, that you are telling us to take her children down to the Catholic church, but we're not allowed to take her to go to their church. Is that fair? So these were the happy memories of the Catholic. And that was a day when, unfortunately, years before Vatican II, in Ireland, everything was cut and dry. It was the Catholics, the Protestants. Now, it was not just political. They considered a difference between them. For example, we were so fanatical indirectly that we used to often wonder, are they really baptized? Maybe we should, when we take them, we should put water on them and turn them into Catholics. You know, that was the way it was back in the days. But what I'm indirectly getting at here is, the political scene was not Protestant against Catholic, really. That was propaganda from the outside. There were Catholics and Protestants who got on very well together. And the greatest men in our country, the greatest revolutionaries, were non-Catholic as well, going for the freedom of shall we say, freedom for a complete country, an island nation. So that was the Ireland that I grew up in. My grandfather's people, who lived in another part of the country, the Midlands, would have been Protestant. And we'd go back and forth over the years to visit the family. We didn't see any difference. It seemed to us that they had more material goods than we did. They owned land, like my mother's side of the family. They owned a little island in the Shannon River. They were actually bootleggers, you know, of the liquor back in those days. And the Protestant section of the family down country, they had bigger farms, they had more, but in later years I discovered why. It was simply, statistically if you like, we had 5 children. If 2 hadn't died at birth, we would have had 7. My Aunt Benny and Uncle Jack, who was Protestant, they had 2 children. It's much easier to raise and educate 2 than 7. Analyze it. So it could afford a little more.